In the meantime, you guys can tell us where you're from, which city, which school, which college. Just a quick intro, just to know who the audience is. Let me check YouTube if you're live.
Yep, we are.
Oh yeah, cool. We are live.
Sorry.
Cool, guys. A quick introduction about Atharv. So Atharv right now he's interning at Amazon.
Yep.
He'll be soon working at Goldman Sachs, and he has a lot of experience in blockchain. He has a lot of experience in cryptocurrency. Has been fiddling around with a lot of these emerging technologies. He's also been part of the Bitscover blockchain club, and that's where he sort of mentors other students about blockchain and its various applications out there. So thanks a lot, Athar, for taking out time and coming in here. Um,
Thanks.
you guys can, the audience can start dropping in a few questions in the chat about blockchain. I definitely have a bunch of questions about it, and we'll soon be taking the questions from the chat at the end of the live stream. So, Athar, let's start from the basics. How would you
Yeah, sure.
define blockchain? What is blockchain?
So the blockchain can be defined as something which is called a distributed, immutable public ledger. So I know that's a lot to take in. So we'll go word by word, and that way we can build up from the basics. So what does distributed mean? Distributed means that it is not controlled by a single entity. For example, when you go to google.com, google.com is controlled by a single entity, Google, and that is where the page is going to load from. That is everything what is going to happen in the backend. That's all going to be centralized. This is distributed in the sense that it can come from various places. Anybody can become an owner inside this particular blockchain. The second thing is immutable. What does immutable mean? So immutable means something that cannot be changed. So once you add something to the blockchain, once you make a transaction, that stays on the blockchain forever. So it is not going to be edited or deleted. It can only be added. So sometimes people call it an append only ledger. So you can just add stuff to it. The third thing is public. So public essentially means that anybody can view what is happening on the blockchain and anybody can make transactions to it. It doesn't mean, so it basically just means that you don't need to be, let's say, a part of Google, the organization, to access google.com. Anybody from outside can access it as an example. And the last thing is a ledger. So you all must have seen, like, at your local shopkeeper or someplace, he has like a ledger of all of the transactions that he has done throughout the day or throughout the month, and that he uses at the end of the year, let's say, to do his taxes and things like that. So that is a ledger, a list of all of the transactions that have happened on that blockchain. So I think that is the way I would define a blockchain: a distributed, immutable public ledger.
Got it. And is this only related to fintech? Like, is it only about financial technology, or can blockchain be applied to pretty much anything?
No, that's a good question. So what has happened right now is currently everything is moving towards using blockchain in fintech, because fintech is the easiest application of blockchain. But blockchain is not at all just limited to fintech. It can be used for supply chain management, for healthcare management, for voting, for everything where there is an internet of value. That is where the blockchain really shines.
Got it. So let's take an example of fintech itself, right? Abhi, मैं ICICI website पर जाता हूँ. I just log in. I do my normal transactions. ICICI maybe takes a cut out of it. How is this, like this particular scenario of banking, right, where I'm making different transactions on ICICI? If we replicate the same model on blockchain, how would it be different?
So what would happen in the case of ICICI would be, the first thing would be there wouldn't be an ICICI an ICICI.com to begin with. There would be a public open place where anybody can make a transaction from their account. Now you might say that how am I going to add money into the account, or how do I do a KYC? So in blockchain, the one major thing that happens is there is no need to do a KYC. So there is no need for somebody to attach an identity of the person who is doing the transaction with the account. So that is separated. And for that reason, you get a lot of privacy in whatever transactions you do. After that, all of the transactions under the hood will be very similar to the way you would interact with, let's say, the ICICI web page. So you would do a transaction on your end as a client, And here also, very similarly, there would be like a web page and you can do a transaction. And the person, once he receives it, they'll get, let's say, a notification saying, okay, you've gotten whatever money. And that way the transaction will go through just like it would go on the centralized way.
Interesting. So what's the advantage of blockchain? Why should someone use blockchain when they have ICICI website?
Right. So the major advantage which the blockchain provides is the ability to prevent censorship and the ability to ensure that you can have all of your transactions anonymous. For example, right now, every single transaction you do on the ICICI bank account is stored in a particular server. So that particular server is going to know every single transaction Harish has ever done, whatever money he has in his account. And that can lead to attacks from somebody from outside. For example, if somebody was able to secure, like, let's say, hack the ICICI account, then he would be able to drain all of Harish's funds into his own thing. That won't happen for a blockchain, because a blockchain is distributed, and a blockchain is such that the amount of processing power you need to attack a blockchain is really, really high. So that is the main place that happens. The second thing is in terms of like your data privacy and everything. So one good example of that is, let's say, Google Pay. So all of the transactions you make on Google Pay are also stored on Google's servers. So even if Google doesn't know that, let's say, Harish paid like whatever shopkeeper at 5 p.m. or 6 p.m., they still know that you are in this particular location because they own Google Maps. So they can see your location and they know that you made a transaction. So then they can put these little pieces together and make a sort of model about you and understand how your behavior is. This will be completely prevented if blockchain goes on to a decentralized payment system, because then that will prevent all of these sort of like identity-based attacks.
Got it. So right now you're saying that, hey, Google, in case of Google Pay, Google as an entity is owning a lot of data and it can understand our payment behaviors. So in a way, we are dependent on Google. But in case of
Definitely.
blockchain, there's no centralized agency. You don't have to depend on anyone, and these transactions are anonymous.
Definitely.
But don't you think? So you said no KYC, no, there's anonymity. Will that lead to more crimes? Will that lead to more financial crimes, or will that lead to things that like dark web kind of things?
Definitely. That's actually a really good question. So what happens in this particular scenario is, yes, in this current scenario, all cryptocurrencies are a double-edged sword. So on one end, you have the advantage of being able to do transactions across the world at very low fees. For example, if I were to send money from US to India via Western Union would probably take a 15-20% cut right there and there. But if you were to transfer it via Ethereum, then you would be able to save a lot of money. But at the same time, because of this identity sort of shielding, which the blockchain does, then crimes can happen. For example, I would be able to pay for something illegal using this. So yes, right now in its current very infant state, this is possible. But over time, governments will bring in regulation. Over time, there will be other things which will happen to ensure that the trackability of your fiat currency also happens. And one more thing to note here is actually all of the transactions which are happening on this illegal dark web using, let's say, Bitcoin or something, all of these people are still paper billionaires, because at some point in the transaction chain, that person is going to have to convert that Bitcoin into fiat money. Like if that person is, let's say, in India, for example, he's going to have to convert that Bitcoin to INR at some point to be able to use it in India. And that is where the whole illegality stops, because when you want to convert it that way, it's a really hard process, because you can't just like directly convert it and like use IMPS or NEFT to transfer it to your bank account. There will be questions, and considering the amount of money that person will sort of illegally put into their account, there will be questions which the income tax department will raise. So at the current point in time, yes, there are chances of corruption, but over time these will fade.
Got it. So in case I hold, illegal Bitcoin, I can't really use it because when I'm converting it to INR or dollars, income tax department or those
Definitely.
entities might come to know
Those
about
questions
this.
will be asked. Ki, where did these funds come from? How did you acquire these? Things like that.
But what if I'm buying things using Bitcoin itself?
Right. So that is definitely one of the places where the government sort of clashes with the idea of Bitcoin, in the sense that what is happening now is there is a creation of this parallel economy where people
Correct.
are going to be able to transact goods and services using a currency which is not backed by any government. I think there's a big distinction to be made between regulated and backed. So what backed essentially means is, if any of you take out any 10, 15 rupee, 10, 20 rupee note from your wallet, you can see that on it, it's written, ki, I, the governor of the RBI, promise to give the bearer of this note whatever 10 rupees, 20 rupees. What that essentially means is the government is assuring the value of that particular note. If you ever handed that 10 rupee note to, let's say, the governor, he is sort of obliged to give you 10 rupees equivalent of something. So that is what backed means. Regulated, on the other hand, means that there is a control on the way it flows throughout the market. And that is where the issue is happening. All of these transactions being unregulated are flowing in ways which the government just doesn't want it to happen. And for that reason, right now, you saw how like Elon Musk first said that you can buy a Tesla with Doge, but then he pulled it back down because these are the regulatory hurdles being faced. So yeah, definitely this is an issue right now, but this is something which is being addressed slowly. And one more thing to add here is there is something called a CBDC, which is being created. So a central bank digital currency. What that means is I would have a Indian rupee, which is on a blockchain. So it's a cryptocurrency, but every single rupee has its own ID, sort of. So if I were to send you, Harish, 10 rupees, then that 10 rupees would have a transaction ID, which would be controlled by the government. And that is where all of these issues will start fading away.
But don't you think if the government gets involved in, how blockchain functions and sets up rules and regulations, then it'll just become similar to, how we deal with fiat currencies?
That is true. So at this point, looking at the current solutions which we have, the way the transition is happening from a decentralized dream, like the dream was to have a world currency with transactions which, let's say, I can buy something from some person in China and he would be able to ship it to me, one economy, one currency, everything. That is slowly moving towards, we can say, private blockchains which are owned by countries. So India has its own little blockchain, like let's say Switzerland has its own little private blockchain, and things like that which are happening. This is definitely a bad thing from the perspective of making everything public, making the world a bigger, more connected, open place. But it makes complete sense from the government standpoint, right? Because at the end of the day, I, as the Indian government, would not want, let's say, somebody like the Chinese government to see what kind of transactions are happening in my country. Because as I said at the very start, a blockchain is public. So anybody can see every transaction that is happening. So if I can find out, these are the accounts which are in India, and these are the transactions which are happening, I can make a really good estimate of the GDP of the country. I can make and not just really good estimate of the GDP, but every little sector can be made an estimate of. And that is where it becomes a question of national security over a question of making the world a better place.
Got it. So what about this, right? Right now, Indian government has a bunch of regulations. Maybe first we can talk about why the Indian government sort of put in so many regulations over cryptocurrency.
Right. So at the end of the day, the Indian government in general has a viewpoint of sort of waiting and watching, seeing what other governments do, and then implementing what they can do by looking at what are the best policies in, let's say, Switzerland, US, whatever. So for that reason, since the government has not been able to completely sort of regulate it properly, and considering the government is also having that mental fatigue of having to deal with the coronavirus and everything, I think what they're doing right now is they're trying to just try to block it until they get a good set of laws about this, and then they'll come out with good regulations about how normal Indians like you and I will be able to interact with this blockchain.
Got it. Okay. Now people in the chat are saying take some questions.
Okay, sure. So yeah.
Okay. Here's the first question. Ishan, I'll take your question after this. First question is, apart from DeFi, okay, first let's talk about DeFi and then we'll get to the second one.
So DeFi essentially stands for decentralized finance. Anything that is happening in the world of centralized finance, right from the basic transactions, like transacting between, let's say, Harish and I, sending him something via the ICICI Bank portal, all the way up to all of these advanced instruments which are used to make money in the stock market, like options, futures, derivatives, things like that. All of these can be codified and put on the blockchain. And that is where decentralized finance comes from. So we have banks which can give loans. There is also a parallel system on the Ethereum blockchain called Compound. And there you can apply for loans, you can pay off loans, you can give money to them as a bank, and then you'll earn interest on it. Just like we have call options, put options, things like that in the real markets on Zerodha or something, you can also do the exact same thing on something called option. It's just called option, and it's a decentralized thing which you can do on Ethereum. So there are all of these parallel structures which are coming up in the world of finance, where if there is something in the real world, in the centralized finance world, there's something in the decentralized finance world.
Whoa, that's super interesting. So just like how, back in the days, banks were getting formed, I think right now it's the evolution where the decentralized finance is getting built up from
Definitely,
scratch. So there's a huge opportunity out there, isn't it?
definitely.
So
And
how was maybe companies and startups capitalizing on the DeFi opportunity?
that's a good question. So there are two ways which a company can really capitalize on this trend. The first thing is being a creator of a new system altogether. The best
Mhm.
example of this is Matic. So what Matic is doing is Matic is creating a sort of layer on top of the current Ethereum blockchain. And what that is going to do is that is going to address some of the scaling solutions. So being able to do all of these transactions faster in a more seamless manner, that is what Matic is working on. So that is a very core, close to the system approach. The other approach which can be done by startups is that of doing applications or creating applications on top of the chain. I think a good example of that is WazirX, creating a stock, an exchange on the blockchain. So that is something that is being done. So these are the two ways people can really create new enterprises on this new system.
Got it. Really curious to know how WazirX functions, right? Like how did they build a, stock market version of cryptocurrencies? How does it function in the back end?
Right. So what happens in WazirX and all of these exchanges in general, and this is just the best of my understanding. There are a lot of nuances which happen under the hood, but what I have understood is when you create an account on, let's say, WazirX or Binance or something, it does not create an account on the actual Ethereum blockchain. What happens is they have a set of accounts where they are holding a lot of currency and things like that. And whenever there's a transaction that happens between you and I, so if I sell you 10 ETH or whatever, then in that case, what happens is there is just a sort of database which they're having. And in that, it just happens like Harish's balance plus 10, my balance minus 10. That's it. So all of these transactions which you see, that's why they happen so fast and at such a low cost, because all of these transactions are happening here. But the step beyond that is where you want to transfer the currency which you bought on Binance or something to your decentralized account, where you would want to use something like compound, or as I said, like option, or all of those things. That is where these fees, the transaction speed, and all of those stuff, that is where it starts to matter.
Understood. So let's take another question. So Ishan's asking, what's the best crypto for transactions? Also, will Ethereum platform be scaled to Ethereum 2.0? Okay, let's take the first question, right?
Yeah.
So if I want to transact from India to the US, um, can I do it with any cryptocurrency?
Yes, you can do it with any cryptocurrency. So you can create a, let's say, Coinbase account in America, and I can have a WazirX account in India, and I can just give you my WazirX address. You can give your Coinbase address, and then that transaction can happen.
Will this lead to black money getting out of India?
It could. It definitely could. But at the end of the day, the first layer jump from centralized to decentralized is where you have to do a KYC anyway. So like being able to convert your INR to Ethereum or whatever on WazirX, that still requires KYC. So they are
Oh,
still going to be able to track that first step. After that, what you do is untracked.
interesting. And okay, so you can do the transactions in pretty much any cryptocurrency.
Yeah.
Why would you prefer a particular cryptocurrency for transaction?
Right. So there are two things. The first thing is the underlying protocol, and the second thing is the stability of the value. So I'll cover each one. The first thing is the protocol. So there are some protocols which are inherently really slow because of the kind of security measures which have been put into place. Best example, Bitcoin. Very slow. It can do like 3 to 4 transactions per large amount of time. I don't exactly know what the amount is right now, but it's very, very slow because it's very power intensive and it's very inefficient. All of that is a trade-off for security. So if I were to send you Bitcoin, then it will take a longer time. It will cost me a lot in gas fees. But then there are all of these other parallel chains. Cardano is one of them. Solana is one of them. Ripple is one of them. And all of these have other underlying systems where I can send that money to you. And that can happen at a lower speed and at a higher speed and at a lower cost.
Security.
That is the first part.
Will security get compromised? Okay.
Also, considering all of these large coins, like as long as you are sending a large cap coin, something which has like upwards of like 10-20 billion dollars of valuation, you're all good, because that that means that has been battle tested by the community, and it also means that people are tending to back it, because if they have a lot of like fiat money in that, then that means they are willing to back it. On the other hand, if you send something like, I don't know, some random coin which you can find at the bottom of some list, then that can cause some issues, because the owner can just like run away with the money. So that is one thing.
Got it.
The
So
second,
this is, sorry, yeah.
Yeah, sure. So the second thing is the stability of value. What that essentially means is, if I want to send you $100 equivalent, then by the time it reaches you, the price shouldn't be $80. Like there should be a very small tolerance in the difference which happens, and that is why something like Tether, so USDT, that is a really good coin, because it's exactly pegged at 1 USD. So if I send you 100, then you're going to get exactly $100 equivalent when you redeem it.
Got it. So I think this is a very common question. What's the difference between Bitcoin and Ethereum?
Right. So Bitcoin and Ethereum, Bitcoin was like the first coin which was ever created, which reached a mass adoption, and that solved the problem of the double spend attack, which can happen throughout like all of these systems. So the double spend attack essentially means, if I were to send Ishan 100 rupees, and at the same time I were to create a transaction like 1 millisecond later which sends Harish 100 rupees, then what can happen is, if the system is not robust enough, then it might think that I have 100 rupees, that transaction goes through to Ishan and Harish, both of them get 100 rupees, and my balance goes to zero. So I've essentially created 100 rupees out of thin air. So for that reason, to ensure all of these securities were coming into play, that's why Bitcoin was created. But Bitcoin being its own little like sort of thing, and there have been many forks of Bitcoin, in the sense that there are many people of differing ideologies which sort of created their own versions of Bitcoin. So for that reason, Bitcoin is sort of losing popularity. There comes Ethereum. Ethereum is like this large cap coin, we can say, which is looking at the world as a way where all we will do is create a blockchain where transactions can happen, and you can write code on top of that to leverage that as much as possible. So Bitcoin does not have this ability to write code on top of it. Well, it does, but it's very limited. Whereas Ethereum, you can write full-fledged applications on top of like the blockchain, and that is where it really stands out. So that is the main difference. You can write code, you cannot write code. Apart from that, there are other more subtle differences, like there is a better community behind Ethereum. There are more developers on it, more researchers on it, things like that.
So because of the ability to write code and build applications on top of Ethereum, do you think there'll be a huge shift where like right now the mainstream coin could be Bitcoin, but then soon people will shift towards Ethereum?
Yeah, this is again a very personal opinion, but I believe that Ethereum is something that is really going to surpass Bitcoin after some point in time. Not just in terms of value, but in terms of like user adoption, in terms of media hype, we can say. Because Ethereum is, in my opinion, the way forward, because they're doing a lot of design decisions right. They are making a lot of good choices about how the customer and how other people new to this world can use Ethereum without having to go through the mental complexities of what is Bitcoin, how does it work under the hood, things like that. So abstracting that is going to make it a better coin in the future, in my opinion.
Got it. Could you talk about maybe one good application that was built on top of Ethereum? Some interesting application?
Well, all of these DeFi protocols, all of these DeFi things, compound, option, all of these things, they're all built on Ethereum. So all of these things, anything which uses ETH as the token underlying it, are all built on Ethereum, and they're all built using smart contracts. So that's the code which runs on top of that engine.
And that brings the next question: what is a smart contract?
Yeah. So a smart contract is any program which you write on top of the blockchain, and that runs when certain events are triggered. So this is very similar to what a real contract does in like real life. An example of that is, if I have a contract with you, you are a person who sells ice cream and I am an ice cream shop. So what you are going to do is, you are going to send me like a truckload of ice cream, and when it comes to my shop, I'm going to send you whatever 10,000 rupees I have to pay you, or something like that. So a parallel to that in the blockchain world is a smart contract, where I may have, let's say, an IoT device which looks at the GPS position of that particular truck, and as soon as it reaches my shop's location, then some amount is cut from my account and goes to your account directly. There is no intermediary person who is stopping this transaction or something like that. So that is a smart contract.
Interesting. Got it. Okay, I think we've answered the question. Okay, what is ETH 2.2?
Yeah, okay. So ETH 2.0 is like the next version of ETH, so to speak. So currently, Ethereum works on a consensus protocol called proof of work. Proof of work is the thing which everybody hears is causing all of the environmental problems and things like that. So the CPUs have to continuously be running to solve a mathematical puzzle, and once they solve the mathematical puzzle, they are essentially going to mint some money for themselves and get those transactions through. What ETH 2.0 is doing is they are moving to something called proof of stake. So what stake essentially means is, if I am a person who is a miner, now in that case it's called a validator. So if I'm a validator, then what I will do is I will say that the next block I mine is going to be a legitimate block, and I'm going to wager something on my end to prove that. So in order to put my money where my mouth is, I'm going to say that I wager 100 ETH on the next block which I mine. So then if I am the one who mines that block or validates that block, I will get a lot of money, because so then my balance will go up. But at the same time, if I act maliciously, then I will lose some ETH. The system will find out that I have maliciously done something and I will lose some ETH. That is a much better system than the current system, because in the current system, every CPU is running to solve that puzzle. Here, only the person who has been allotted that block to validate is running it. So you have like a small fraction of the amount of energy that is being used. And for that reason, Ethereum 2.0 is the superior and better option which is going to happen in the future. Apart from that, there are a lot of under the hood optimizations which are going to take place. But that is something which is very far in terms of the roadmap. So they expect an actual release in December, like the first release. And then they're going to continuously be changing up till, I think, mid 2023. I'm not sure, but it's a very big process to move from ETH 1.0 to 2.0.
Got it. So it's a more energy efficient way of doing the transactions.
Yeah, essentially.
I think we answered the question about corruption.
Yeah.
Taking out that money. What are your thoughts on?
That's
How do you
I
pronounce
think
it?
you must
Tether?
have watched the video by Tech Lead about this. So Tether is the stable coin which everybody uses to sort of hold value pegged to the US currency. But
Mm-hmm.
the issue behind the Tether company, the company which mints Tether, is that the reserves which they have are not sufficient to back up an event where everybody would liquidate. Let me give you an example. If I were the Tether company and I were to put out 100 USD Tether into the markets, all I have to back that up in real fiat value is $2. That is what he means when it says he has two reserves backed in USD. What that would happen in an issue is, if everybody starts to liquidate their positions, that means they start to move from USD Tether to like real life USD. Then let's say I come and say I want $2 back. So now they have 98 USD Tether and they would give me those $2. Now if another person comes, they don't have the money to pay that person. So they're essentially bankrupt if 2% of the number of people who have bought USD Tether start to liquidate. That is definitely a ticking time bomb, as Ishan has said. But then the sort of safer option is to not buy it, in the sense that not buy something where like the only value in Tether is the pegged, like it being pegged to the USD. So what you can do instead is you can buy Ethereum, because that itself is an inherent store of value too.
Interesting. So, we've been talking about a bunch of applications of blockchain. Why do you think students should care about it? Why do you think, everyone should learn about the blockchain? I've heard people say that just like how few people were reluctant to learn about the internet and then later they regret it, it's kind of a similar situation. What are your opinions on that?
Definitely, that's very true. So just like in the 1990s, the internet was a wave, and that wave made some people billionaires, and then it broke some companies who did not like embrace that wave. I personally feel that a very similar wave is being seen with the blockchain, like the blockchain technology and the way it is coming to all of these various sectors. For that reason, anybody who gets into this field right now is really going to make big money. That is one thing. And the second thing is they are going to be a part of this new revolutionary trend, which is going to change the world for sure. It might take 20, 30 years. Just like right now, we see internet as its massive behemoth being a part of our everyday lives 30 years after like it started coming into the mainstream, which is in the 1990s. So that is one thing. The second thing is students in general can make a lot of money out of this. So there are a lot of freelance options. There are a lot of really good jobs. All of these startups are paying really big money because they're all getting a lot of seed funding, because all of these people who are doing the seed funding realize that this is the next wave. So One more thing that is happening in this field is there is a huge demand for developers in this field, but there is a very small supply, and that creates an opportunity. So if you can be a very competent developer in this field, then you can really grab this opportunity and make a lot of money in this process.
Awesome. And with that said, Atharv also has a live cohort. He's gonna take like few private students and then sort of mentor them and then take them through blockchain. So you can check out the link which is pinned in the comment if anyone's interested.
That's true. I'd just like to point out one more
Sure.
philosophical, like a nuanced aspect
Hmm.
of it. So there are two ways which a person can make money in a field like this. One thing is by being a creator. So you create the next I don't know, Google equivalent, the next YouTube equivalent on the blockchain. And the second thing is doing a job. Now, unfortunately, in India, we have become sort of mentally wired to want to go for that job, in the sense that people think that, oh, I'm working for Amazon or I'm working for Google or whatever, and that is the best thing that can ever happen to me. But that sort of mentality is what led to us not catching the 1990s internet wave. So now what you can see is in India, all of the companies which are like these massive companies, they have their back offices here. So Goldman Sachs has their back tech office here, but then their main office is in New York. Amazon's main offices are in Seattle, but then we have a sort of office. I wouldn't say it's a back office because the quality of projects which happen here are also fantastic, but the this paradigm shift is something which blockchain will be able to provide. So if India and its talented pool of engineers is able to do something about this wave, then we might be able to put India on the map in terms of technology, not just as a place where you can get cheap coders, but as a place where you can really change the world coming here. So then we can create like the Silicon Valley equivalent in India. And that is something which I really believe can happen.
That's super interesting, right? Because if you take a look at any major company that's making huge chunks of money, Infosys, TCS, Wipro, it's all just outsourced work, right? So you
Unfortunately,
have innovations happening back in the valley, back in US, and then all the grunt work comes back to India, and then
that's true.
you get
That's true.
cheap labor. And that's what India is known for, right? Any you go to Europe, you go to US, and they're like, hey, telecalling, give it to India. BPO outsourcing, give it to India.
That's true.
But I think this is a huge wave. And if India is at the forefront, if we have more builders, if we have more creators from India, then it could really lead the next revolution of blockchain.
That's
Great
true. That's
insight.
true.
Yeah.
Even one more thing is
Mhm.
like the kind of salaries which are provided to top engineers in India. I'm saying very talented, the people who graduate from IITs, BITS, the best
Mhm.
institutions.
Mhm.
The salaries which we get here are, let's say, 12, 24 lakh, whatever.
Mhm.
That is lower than the minimum wage in US. So for them, it makes sense to outsource all of this work because they are getting a top engineer who is very brilliant, who's gone through all of this rigorous process of like whatever JE and everything, that rigorous 4 years in these crazy colleges in India. And still they are getting someone who's going to outperform a mediocre student in America who would charge, let's say, 100,000 US dollars a year for the same thing. So they can get 5 such engineers in India for the same price. And for that reason,
Exactly.
it makes a lot of sense
Mhm.
for them to outsource all of this to India.
Correct. Yeah.
That's
Cool,
the
guys.
thing.
So if future entrepreneurs, future creators, if you guys are watching, this is the time to get into blockchain. So start
For
building,
sure,
start
for sure.
experimenting with different things, and you never know, you could build the next Facebook on blockchain. Oh, talking about that, what do you think of social media built on blockchain? I've seen a lot of people talk about that.
That's actually a very interesting place where blockchain is really taking foot. So the first part, the first reason why everybody is against the whole centralized social media aspect of it is for two reasons. The first thing is keeping and selling data. So
Hmm.
the whole Cambridge Analytica scam that happened, like they were able to sell off a lot of their data in order to allegedly change the way the elections happen. That is one thing. The second thing is censorship. And this is a very important topic because if you look at what happened during the end of the Trump era in America, there is a CEO of Twitter who is not even a person who is a part of the government or something like that. He has the power to block the president of the United States of America, who's arguably the most powerful man in the world, from tweeting on his site. Imagine.
Correct.
So everybody was scratching their head thinking, how is this possible that a random person who works in Silicon Valley has more power than the most powerful person allegedly in the world? So censorship is something which is really causing a lot of issues. throughout the world, and this is not just America, all of the news which comes from all of these Middle Eastern countries, things like that, a high level of censorship happens on it. China is also a good
China.
example where censorship happens to a different level, where we don't even know what's happening inside. We don't even know what the coronavirus thing is happening, things like that. I won't get into conspiracy theories, but whatever. So for that reason, having a decentralized way to have all of these social media parts, so a decentralized Twitter, a decentralized YouTube, things like that, that will be a way to ensure that there is a censorship resistant voice to the public. And that is very powerful when the truth is involved, because when you have the truth which you want to get to everywhere in the world, you need something which is censorship resistant. So that is where blockchain is really going to shine in the future.
Interesting. Okay, but then that way, even if it's someone spreading false news or someone starting to start a riot, you can't even stop those people then.
That's true, but I
Can you
mean, then
separate
again,
it?
that is a problem which even the centralized government, like the centralized way, has not been able to solve. If you think about it, all of these companies, like massive companies, Google, Facebook, whatever, they're essentially unregulated governments, and they span
Correct.
multiple countries. So
Correct.
if a entity of that power, which spans multiple countries and is essentially an unregulated government, has not been able to solve this, then there's a high chance that a decentralized anonymous system will also not be able to solve it in the near future. But in the distant future, I'm sure that there are going to be multiple ways to be able to handle this thing. And this is why I sort of like Reddit a lot, in the sense that the upward downward system filters out all of the like the sensationalist things and keep the more nuanced answers at the top. And that is a way to really filter out the truth from these sensationalist articles.
So you actually give power to the people to decide what's right and what's wrong, and
Definitely.
not the CEO of Twitter.
Right, essentially.
Fair enough. Got it. So let's take some questions from the audience.
Awesome.
Oh, it's already 7:45. I didn't realize. Okay, Ishan is asking a lot of questions today. It's just him. If transactions using CBDCs can be tracked by central banks, how is it decentralized?
They're not decentralized. Like in the name, it says central bank. It's not decentralized. It is completely controlled by that particular government. It is definitely a digital dollar. The only advantage it sort of gives is the ability for a country to track all of these corrupt transactions that happen. For example, if every single rupee is a digital rupee, then I can't pay a bribe, because how will I justify that bribe transaction from my like digital India rupee wallet to that government official's wallet? So essentially, all of this corruption just goes away, and that is the main appeal for governments to create this.
Do you know of any Indian bank that is sort of adopting blockchain as part of the
I don't actually.
systems?
The thing is, in India, the banks are, I would say, a bit scared to like take these steps, because
of the government.
Yeah, I'm not saying the government is like not giving like it's not supporting the bank or something. They definitely are. What I feel is the government itself has not been able to really think through what can and cannot be done. Because one thing I've noticed is when the government takes a decision, it is usually a nuanced decision, especially when it comes to technology and things like that. Like for example, when you saw like recently they said that okay, we can start creating 5G towers in India, but only if it is like non-China equipment. So these are the nuanced decisions which the government takes. Definitely the 5G rollout is slower in India than US, because in US like the decision was made faster. It's just that it's happening a bit slowly. So in India, a similar thing is happening with blockchain. What I feel is they're really testing out what cannot be done, what they feel are the actual uses, how the Indian public can really benefit from it the most. And based on that, I think they will come out with a really good set of laws to govern this.
So a couple of days back, I saw this headline, didn't really read the article, which said that 5G is going to amplify the effects of blockchain. Like, what do people mean by that? Is it the speed or?
I really don't know about that, because so the only thing I can see happening, as you mentioned, like based on the article alone, like I haven't read the article, but yes, one is definitely speed. Low latencies is one thing, because 5G inherently has low latency. So if I am the first to, let's say, mine a block, then that block will be propagated through the network faster. and that way like the transactions might happen a bit faster. That is just one thing. But I'll have to read the article to get back to you.
Sure. Yeah. Okay, let's take the next question. I've taken and completed this course, and trust me, it's definitely worth your time. Oh, he's talking about your course on
Yeah. So
blockchain.
I remember Sagar. He was a part of the course.
Awesome. Also, for those who just joined in, if anyone wants to check out his live course, which he takes on weekends, it's given in the pinned comment. So go check it out. Yeah, he's taking a demo lecture tomorrow at 7. So join us, learn a bit about blockchain. How was your blockchain journey? Like, how did you get started? Like, what interested you to get into this field?
Yeah,
Who inspired you?
So what happened is in the second semester on campus. So this is my 1-2. In that, what happened is the whole cryptocurrency market started to really catch fire, so to speak, in the sense that it started to really moon. Bitcoin hit $10,000, which was like some insane thing at that time. And I started to get into that. I didn't do trading back then, but I also almost immediately realized as a gut feeling that the technology which is underlying the system is what's going to be a game changer. So I started to do some research. I started to work on it, and I asked a few professors on our campus if they knew somebody who I can work with and things like that. Luckily, there was a professor on our campus, Professor Vinayak Naik. He is now the HOD now in our computer science division. So he was also venturing into this field, and he was looking for students. So I started to work under him informally in my second year, and that is where the whole journey started. So then I started to do a bit of research. After getting that experience, I applied to an internship and I worked for free. So I just said, hey, listen, I know I have zero experience, but I just want to know how the industry works. So can I just like shadow you guys? I know that I won't be able to contribute much, but I'm working for free.
Yeah.
So what do you guys have to lose? So I worked at that company called Prime Chain Technologies. That was a great experience. Got to learn a
What
lot.
were they doing in blockchain?
So back then they were working on supply chain. So how you can integrate blockchain into supply chain and things like that. Now what they're doing is now they're creating a system so that you can get an app up and ready on the blockchain in under 7 or 10 minutes. They have a really cool system for that. So that is what they're working on currently. From there, I did an internship at UST Global, which is also doing a lot of things in blockchain. And then things just kept progressing. And that is how I ended up here.
Yeah, damn. Interesting. People asking about Polygon.
Yeah, Polygon or Matic. It's rebranded to Polygon. Yeah, it's definitely one of the more exciting projects in the field. And as I said, all of these big investors do see a lot of potential in blockchain as an investment and also as a revolutionary idea to change the world. And for that reason, you might have seen Mark Cuban investing a lot of money into that. So that's what I was saying in the in the mid portion of this podcast, that there are two ways to make money here. One is by being a creator. So Polygon did the creator thing, and now they're really reaping the rewards of it. Also, one more thing to notice, Polygon was very early to the game. You guys are seeing Polygon right now in 2021. Polygon I think, has been around since 2018. So they were there, they were refining their art throughout these really crazy times from 2018 to 2021. And now when the time was right, they burst onto the scene, and now they're getting all of these funding. So being at the right place at the right time really makes a difference.
Yeah, plus it's an Indian company.
Yeah,
right? So
that's really good
better.
for the nationalistic sentiment for blockchain in general in India.
Correct. They have a $3 billion market capitalization.
Insane.
What's ADA?
ADA is Cardano. So Cardano is also one of these coins which is really changing the world. You remember how I said ETH 2.0 is moving to proof of stake? Well, Cardano is already proof of stake. So Cardano is one step ahead in terms of that. And Cardano is, because of that, it's able to leverage a lot of the technologies which Ethereum plans to do in the roadmap in the future. So for that reason, Cardano has a high market cap. Some of the developers of Ethereum have moved to Cardano. So some of the visionaries behind the original Ethereum project have now moved there, and they are looking at it as the way forward. So definitely Cardano is one of the bigger projects. Then again, Cardano, and like I think the question was ADA versus Matic. So you can't really compare the two because these are completely different businesses. It's like comparing Microsoft with let's say Google. Microsoft like creates the operating system and stuff, and Google is the search engine. So Matic is the one which is providing that scaling on top of Ethereum. Whereas Cardano is a completely different protocol in and of itself. Not protocol, but under the hood application in and of itself. So for that reason, if you're talking about which coin to buy, then I'm sorry, but like you can just flip a coin because nobody knows which one is going to go up and which one is going to go down. But from that standpoint, yes, these are two very different companies.
And even I've been seeing this thing around. What is the spy network? People keep spamming these messages. Have you heard of it?
Really haven't done a lot of research. Like I've seen this, but
yeah.
I will need to do more research than before I like give an opinion.
To me, it seems more of a scam because it's a random coin that someone made and is making college students spam.
I mean, then again, a lot of these coins did start out as random coins, right? Like, if you think about it, Dogecoin
that's there. Yeah. Let's see.
Unless
no, but the way they market it is a bit dicey.
Shady. Okay.
Yeah, it's like a get rich quick scheme kind of thing.
It could be, dude. Like again, I'm gonna have to do a bit of research.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When is blockchain course coming? The demo will be tomorrow, so check out the pinned comment, click on it, sign up for the demo, and see you tomorrow. And for those who are wondering what it is, it's a live course which Atharva is going to take on Clinify's platform. This is the second batch. First batch was phenomenal. People loved it, and it's only for a small amount of people, so we're capping it. Just 1 second.
It's really good to see that there's a lot of interest in blockchain, especially in India, because
I know, right?
That just shows to me that the future, especially as I said, like in terms of the marketability of India as a place where blockchain business can happen, is really growing, and this is very good.
And looking at the interest, it seems a lot of people are asking, as government all over. Okay, let's spread out. As governments all over the world are trying to allow cryptocurrencies by regulating it, don't you think it's going to harm the fundamental of blockchain that's decentralized?
That's true. Yeah. So what's happening is it went from being a public decentralized vision where everybody can do everything on it. It will become the next world currency, and now it's moving towards what I like to coin it as centralized decentralization. It's decentralized, but within a certain boundary. So within the borders of India is decentralized to an extent, but it's still centralized by the government. And this is something which is definitely against the original vision of Bitcoin and blockchain and things like that. But at the end of the day, it's a government here. It is going to do everything it can to retain power while giving enough leeway for the citizens to do the best they can within that bounds. So that's definitely one thing that's happening.
What do you think of this statement? Cryptocurrency is built around people, while money is built around, I think fiat currency is built around government.
I mean, it's a very hot take, and the way it's been worded, especially in caps lock, is very
yeah.
That's true. A cryptocurrency is built around people, but the legitimacy of the cryptocurrency is eventually decided by the thing which provides legitimacy is somebody who is willing to bear the brunt of whether the value falls or rises, right? So I can't be a person who says, I will legitimize the value of Ethereum, because then that means that if any person comes to me and says, I want to cash in my Ethereum, I need to pay them fiat. So the only entity which can do that level of legitimization is the government. So at some point in time, unless the whole world is able to shift to cryptocurrencies magically overnight, which I doubt will ever happen, the government is still going to be controlling a bit of the cryptocurrency way. But yes, the take is very hot, and I appreciate the caps lock behind it.
Okay, could you talk a bit about, someone asking about the development part of blockchain, like how can you become a blockchain developer?
Yeah, right. So the way you can do it is by first, so I'm going to take this from a very, I'm going to assume that you've never done development in your life. Okay. So the first thing you should do is you should get your fundamentals really clear. By fundamentals, I mean learning data structures, learning how algorithms work, learning how all of these data structures related to blockchain work. What is hashing? How does hashing work? Different types of hashing. What is a linked list? How databases work? how does decentralization work, how do networks work, and how does, let's say, something replicate over the network, how does it propagate through a network, things like that, these nuances. That is the first thing. The second thing is learn a language which is suited to Python, to blockchain development. I would personally say that you should learn Python and JavaScript. Both of them are important because Python in general is very general purpose. You'll get to learn a lot while learning Python, and JavaScript because all front end development happens in JavaScript. So if you ever were to make an application, the front end is going to still be written in JavaScript. Then you can move on to Solidity, which is the programming language of Ethereum. So when I said that you can write smart contracts on Ethereum, all these smart contracts are written on Solidity, the language. So that is how you can learn it. And then you can move forward in more advanced ways. So then you can learn how smart contracts can call each other, how you can call a front end from a smart contract to do transactions based on that, or how you can couple a database and a blockchain. So what you can do is you can run all of these expensive calculations on a database and just give the final value to a blockchain to store. So these more advanced concepts is how you can move forward and become a really good developer.
Interesting. I'll just take one last question and then we can wrap it up.
Yeah, cool.
Searching for one good one.
These are really good questions, by the way.
Smart audience.
Yep.
Should have turned on slow mode. It's kind of hard to. Someone's asking, "How are you so smart?"
I mean, I don't think like there are much smarter people around. There's always one person who's smarter and one person who's less smarter than you anywhere you go.
Okay, someone's asking in terms of development. You said Ethereum is one of the best. Are there any other blockchain platforms like that apart from Ethereum where you think development per se is going to blow up?
So one thing which I've been following a lot recently is this thing called Solana. So Solana. That's also a place which is creating all of these scalable applications, like in the sense that their architecture from the ground up is very scalable. So for that reason, you don't have to care a lot about efficiency because the sort of underlying protocol is taking care of it to an extent. So that is one thing which I'll definitely look into. But in general, yeah, what I'd say is just do Ethereum, because Ethereum is like the sort of de facto standard for development. It has become like how Java was like the big thing in the 2000s and everybody was doing it because that's where everything was. That's where Ethereum development and Solidity is right now. So might as well get into it. You can always pivot later.
Got it.
Yeah, okay, that's the same question. Okay.
So, final one. What is this true? China's already started a digital yuan?
So China was very strategic about this in the sense that what China did is first they banned all mining in the country. So they essentially said that no Bitcoin will ever be mined here. I think no Ethereum also will be mined here. And now what they did is they said that we now have a CBDC ready. So you know what I'm saying, that there's going to be something in India. They did that already, and that is one thing I really applaud China about, even though like it's anti-national to applaud them. But they move very fast in terms of technology, and they are willing to adopt, fail, and like reinvent as they go really, really fast. And that is one thing that's really happening here. So they started the digital yuan. I think that is going to be something which is backed 1:1. So if you have a digital yuan, that is going to back 1:1 with like an actual fiat yuan, and you can like exchange rates easily. And one more thing which I think you might know, Harish, is the yuan is pegged to the US dollar anyway. So essentially what you have done is you have created like a one step in between to a digital dollar anyway. But that is only for the citizens of China. So it's a very smart thing which they've done, and very fast. Like they've like iterated really fast to get it out of the door as fast as possible. I'm just very curious to see how it pans out over the long scale. Like, will people accept that more, or will people just go back to using the normal fiat yuan? But
so you're saying there are already banks which actually give out loans in digital yuan
in China? Yes,
in China.
Yes. So in fact, the central bank of China has already created like the whole ecosystem around it, where loans can be done using it. I don't think there is like an options trading or anything there yet, but all of these basic things are ready. in China.
Wow.
So that's also really cool to see. It's going to be a great case study moving forward, dude. I'm really interested to see what happens in the next 5 years.
Definitely. Is it like Tether, if digital yuan? Because that's linked to the dollar, this is to the yuan.
Yeah, but Tether is created by a private company, so it's not government backed. And Tether, as Ishan had pointed out, is having a 2% backing rate. So if they print 100 USDT, there are $2 backing. Here it's 1:1. So 100 digital yuan created, 100 fiat yuan ready.
Oh, got it. Okay. Cool, man. I think that's it for today. Thanks a ton for joining in. Super excited.
My
for
pleasure, dude. It was a great experience.
Yeah, super excited for your launch of your course. Also, gonna start it tomorrow. So just check it out, guys. Its link is given in the pinned comment. And apart from that, thanks a ton for taking out time. It's been almost 56 minutes. Tons of knowledge. I think someone can maybe put timestamps so that if someone new is just joining in, they can sort of skip through and look at the various topics we discussed about. Would really appreciate if someone could put in the timestamps. And apart from that, chalo, that's it. Thanks, guys, for joining in. Really appreciate it.